Hey everybody, and welcome to this knee brace review and comparison video. Today we are going to compare the 4 knee braces that I've had some personal experience with. So over the years I've had a number of leg injuries, so finding good leg protection has become kind of a passion of mine. And these 4 knee braces here, these are my own personal braces, paid for with my own money. I have no affiliation with any brand or store or anything. It's just and this video will be really my personal experience. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a orthopedic professional, so I will share my knowledge and experience, but it is, caveat is that it is my personal experience. I'm also not a professional racer of any sort. I'm an average trail rider and amateur racer, so keep in mind that this is going to be my perspective. So the braces that we have here today are my Donjoy Defiance 2, my Pod K8 version 2.0. Both of these I've been using for a number of years. This one for about 5 years, this one for a couple years now. And then I also have a CTI OTS Brace, the motocross version, and a Mobius X8. As I've had an injury recently, I've acquired these two just to try them essentially, and see if I can kind of upgrade my brace game. So like everybody out there, whenever I'm shopping for something, including knee braces, I've watched and read dozens and dozens of reviews online, and the unfortunate reality is that a lot of them are very short and really only focus on the positive aspects of each product because they're trying to sell it to you. So I really had to get these in my hands and actually experience them myself to really start to understand what's good about them, and frankly they're all good, but they're good for different reasons. And this is something that I will really focus on in this video, is that these, just like with any motorcycle gear or motorcycles themselves, it's very use specific. So, you wouldn't use a motocross bike in the woods, you wouldn't use a street helmet in the woods or in a motocross track. And I think the same goes for protective gear like knee braces. Some of them excel in one area while sacrificing in another area. So this is going to be a pretty long video, so feel free to skip ahead. But really what we're going to do is talk about the general concepts that I look for when I'm picking a brace. These are things like fit, design, protection, mobility, durability, type of riding that it's best for, in my personal opinion. And then we will go through each brace and see how it does in those different areas. So if you don't feel like listening to me talk for a really long time, just pause the video and look at the table. All right, so the first item that is very important is fit. Arguably, this is probably the main thing when it comes to knee braces. If the knee brace, it does not fit you well, if you can't get it on very, very tight, then it's not going to do anything. So this is something that I've learned from my orthopedic knee brace, which is this Donjoy Custom here that we'll talk about in detail later. But when I had this sized for me and custom fitted, the person fitting it, who's a professional at these things, so he actually put it on me, and I was amazed at how tight he said it had to be. And if you think about it, really, your leg, it's soft tissue, so there's a lot of movement there. And if it's not tight, then the brace will be able to move a lot before it actually locks your leg in position. So you really want it very, very tight. You need to be able to get it so tight that really you can't fit a finger under any of the straps. And that is very, very important. So fit is the main thing. This is where a custom brace like this Donjoy Defiance, which has been custom molded to my leg, is best. And CTI and some other companies do this as well. As far as brace design goes, that I would suggest looking for when looking at a brace. So obviously custom is best. This is a custom Donjoy that was custom molded to my leg, so this frame actually is the shape of my leg, and it fits really well. But if you're looking for an off-the-shelf brace, something that makes a huge difference are these collars, these flexible collars that both the Pod and the CTI have. This makes it so you can really cinch it down on the top and the bottom of your leg, and it makes it fit much better. And then the Mobius does this a little bit differently, which we'll talk about as well. But the other thing to look for is wide straps and lots of padding, because when the strap is really wide, you can really tighten it without causing yourself a lot of discomfort. So that is very important. And the third thing is padding. Again, using Mobius as an example here because it has excellent padding, is the more padding there is, and CTI is actually pretty good in that aspect as well. The more padding there is, the tighter you'll be able to get it to your body, and the better it will fit. So another aspect of fit that is very important to consider is the chassis, and this also comes into play when you're talking about sizing. So there's a couple different concepts. The most popular one is essentially the one that CTI uses. So there's a rigid frame that's made out of either plastic or carbon fiber, in some cases metal, but most high-end braces are carbon fiber. So this is carbon fiber, and it's this is a very rigid. Same thing with this Pod here. It's very rigid. You can't bend it. The pod chassis is almost the same as the CTI. And then Donjoy, also carbon fiber, also rigid chassis. So this comes into play with both fit and sizing, because if you have a rigid chassis, the width of your knee is essentially what determines the sizing, and you have to really pay attention to this when you're picking a size of the brace, when talking about the shelf ones, because while the straps are adjustable and whatnot, this part is not adjustable. Aside from some little pads that you can alternate here, really, if your bones are too big to fit inside of this frame, you're not going to be comfortable, because it's going to press on the sides of your knee and it's going to feel really bad. So when they tell you to measure underneath your kneecap, again, this is super important. It's not obvious. When they tell you to measure underneath your kneecap, really they're trying to get your knee joint width. So measure your knee joint, because kneecap is honestly kind of a vague thing. So if you measure your knee joint, you will get the right measurement, because that's what is actually important, because this does not move. So that's an important thing to keep in mind about the design. This is kind of the traditional solid frame. What you have with some other braces, and Mobius is a really good example of that, is a very different type of design. So what they have, they don't actually have a rigid frame. They have a frame that's rigid in all the right directions. So it's not going to let you hyperextend your knee. So it's rigid. I'm trying to extend it, all the way this way, and I can't. It's rigid. It's not going to let your knee move side to side as well. So I can't move it this way. But where it doesn't need to be rigid, so like this top piece, this is flexible, so it can really grip onto the top and bottom of your leg. And the knee joint is actually, let me see if I can make this visible. So if I take my hand here, I can actually, you see that movement? So this is actually one of the things that makes the Mobius so comfortable is the fact that the frame has flex to it, but only in the directions that are supposed to flex. And specifically around the knee joint area, it allows it to actually grip the sides of your knee joint very well without putting too much pressure on it. And that's why I think it's actually one of the more comfortable off-the-shelf braces, and the sizing I think is a little bit easier with it. So this is an example of a well-fitting brace. So you can see I can't stick my fingers under any of the straps, and the brace is really, really solid on my leg. It doesn't slide down, it doesn't move up, it just moves with the leg. So the second thing to consider when picking your brace is ligament protection. This is obviously the main job of the knee brace. If it doesn't protect you well, then you might as well just not have a knee brace. So this is very important. But impact protection should also not be overlooked. So we'll talk about these two briefly. So what you're looking for as far as a ligament protection is it should stop your knee from hyperextending, meaning this is your knee bending, and then hyperextending is moving in the other direction, so moving that way. If you hit something or your leg gets stuck, it shouldn't be able to do that. This frame should, and these hinges should stop it from being able to do that. And the other important aspect that's actually happens a lot in off-road riding, especially in slippery conditions, is this rigid frame. It does not allow flex in this direction. So if your bike slides out, you put a foot down and the ground is slippery, you don't want your knee to buckle sideways, essentially. Or if somebody hits you in the side of your leg or something like that, you don't want your knee to buckle sideways and pop one of the ligaments. All right, so the second most important aspect of protection is impact protection. When you're riding a dirt bike, whether it's off-road or motocross track or whatever, if you're falling down or just hitting trees and stuff with your shins and knees, you want some protection over those areas. So, and really, the protection itself is important, but what's critical is that it is over the entire range of motion, specifically when your knee is bent, because really most of your riding and definitely the majority of your crashing is going to be, it's not going to be with your leg straight, it's going to be with your leg bent. When you hit the ground, your leg is probably going to be bent, bracing for impact. So very important to have it over your entire range of motion. You don't want any huge gaps. You can see there's a little bit of a gap here. We'll talk about that later. But really you want coverage through the whole range of motion. As far as what it's made out of, typically it's pretty standard. I think all protectors are typically plastic with some sort of padding behind it. Obviously the more padding you have, the more comfortable it will be, and the more impact it will actually absorb. Plastic just distributes it, which is good, but really you do want some absorption there to make sure you're not bruising your kneecaps or your shins or anything like that. Another important thing to consider when looking at knee braces is mobility. Dirt biking is a very active thing. It doesn't matter what kind of dirt biking you're doing, you're moving on the bike a lot, so you want something that moves with your body and moves easily. And that is, all braces are a little bit different, but really you do want you want good fit, first of all, so that it's not sliding around on you. Then you want a good hinge design. Most braces, I think, these days are pretty good. They have at least 2 pivots in their hinge, which makes it move a lot more like a human joint. They all kind of do it differently, but generally I think all the hinges are pretty good. And then the final aspect of it is the weight. So obviously you don't want something that's really heavy and bulky. And fortunately, all the braces, even if they're not carbon fiber, are actually really lightweight. So this one is plastic. This one is carbon fiber. And honestly, if you hold these two together, you really can't tell which one is lighter. They are all pretty similar. They're all pretty lightweight. And so the final thing that I typically look for in a brace is quality and durability. So I'm holding this Donjoy because I've had it for over 5 years, and this is something that you really want to consider when picking a brace, because these things are expensive, and you also want to be able to trust them. You don't want straps failing, you don't want parts failing, you don't want missing screws or anything like that when you show up for a ride and all of a sudden your gear is not working properly, or even falling apart in the middle of your ride, which does happen. So something to look out for, check the forums, check the reviews, make sure it's something that you can trust and that's going to last you a long time. All right, so first up, we have this Donjoy Defiance tube that I actually got as a prescription after I had my ACL reconstruction done. So this brace is carbon fiber. It is custom. Somebody actually shows up at your house, measures your leg, and they will then custom mold this frame specifically to your leg shape. So out of all the braces, it is by far the most comfortable. It is also by far the most mobile. You can run with it. I've went rock climbing with it. I've mountain biked with it. It is by far the most comfortable brace. I also think because it does fit the best, it is the most protective of all of them as far as ligament protection. The durability of it has been very, very good. You can see my custom hinge protection here. But I probably have well over 300 dirt bike hours on it, probably more. And sweat, mud, dirt, all kinds of drama. And all the straps still work, all the Velcro still works. All the hinges work. None of the hardware came loose. I've never had to service it at all. So this has been ridiculously durable. You can see there's all kinds of scratches and it just wear. So this thing is very, very durable. I'm very impressed with it. And it's also worth mentioning that it does have a lifetime warranty, I believe, on the frame. And they can rebuild the rest of it. So the hinges and the straps, they can replace that for something like $100, I want to say. So the downside of this brace is the impact protection. So this is the impact protector that it came with. It is very, very wimpy. It's better than nothing, but just for comparison, here is a pretty typical Liat protector, which is actually what I wore with the brace, and you can see just the difference in size between these two. It's very substantial. So I decided not to use this one. I tried both of them, and really even just putting your knees down on the ground, you can feel the difference. So I've never used this. I just ran with this protector, which actually works fairly well. The downside is that it does end up being pretty bulky, and it does raise the time that you need to get ready to ride, because not only do you have to put the brace on, but you also have to put this protector on top of the brace. And then putting pants over this ends up being kind of a chore. So the other downside is that this thing is expensive. So 5 years ago, I believe it cost me over $1,200. Luckily, my insurance paid for part of it because it was a prescription after my ACL surgery. But it's still pretty expensive, even after insurance. And this is for just one single brace for one side, for one leg. So, with all these things in mind, I think what this brace is good for is mobility on the bike and general ligament protection. So for things like motocross or somewhere where you're really working hard on the bike, but you're not crashing onto roots, you're not crashing onto rocks, you're not really taking a lot of blunt impacts with your legs, I think this brace is very hard to beat. The other aspect of it, I think, is maybe important to consider is it's probably one of the more likely to break your femur, just the way the frame is designed, because the frame goes on both sides of your legs. If your foot gets caught in something, it's not Velcro holding your leg straight, it's carbon fiber, and there's not much your bones can do against the carbon fiber frame, unfortunately. So you can see on the bike, you have pretty good protection all the way from the bottom of your foot all the way to your knee. When you're riding, when you're standing up, same thing. So really good protection when you're kind of in the attack position. The only downside of this specific impact protector, I would say, is that it's got a weak spot right here, kind of towards the top of your tibia. So that's just something to be aware of. But it's specific more to this Liat protector than the brace itself. All right, so this is the CTI OTS Brace. The CTI pretty much pioneered the whole motocross knee brace thing. A lot of professionals wear the CTI custom braces. This is the cheaper off-the-shelf version that's adjustable to fit many leg sizes. So the design of it is pretty traditional. It's a carbon fiber frame in a pretty traditional shape that I think a lot of other manufacturers have actually copied. And the way that it's designed to be fit-wise is that it's got these flexible sleeves, top and bottom, which allow it to fit around the bottom and the top of the leg really well. And it's got a lot of padding on the inside of the brace that also allow it to fit really well. There's some silicone on the padding that really helps keep the brace in one place. And as far as sizing goes, so it's a rigid frame, so you have to size for your knee joint. And you can get these little pads that of various thicknesses that will allow you to really for it to sit tight around your knee. The patella cup is pretty nice. We'll get to the protection in a second, or to the impact protection in a second, but there's some good padding here as well. So the straps aren't fantastic. They're pretty narrow, and they're also not the biggest. They don't seem super durable, to be honest, but there is some elastic in them, which is actually kind of nice. As far as quality goes, that's another thing that's for a. So these are, I think, around $800 for two of them, and the quality honestly is not bad, but it's also not great. It's probably kind of hard to see, but the plastic is not really. It doesn't feel high quality. It doesn't feel expensive. It doesn't feel, premium. There's nothing really wrong with it, but the whole thing feels a little bit on the cheap side, especially when you're comparing it to something like a pod. So as far as feel, the brace is probably one of the highest mobility braces, so you really can bend your knee really well. It kind of disappears on your body pretty much when you put it on. There's a lot of airflow, obviously. It's very comfortable with the exception of the bottom here. There's a pressure point that goes along your knee that becomes very apparent after about a half an hour. And there's some pressure points around the kind of the hinges, kind of where you're gripping the bike. And it's it might be just, you know, my specific leg, so this might vary for different people, but that's just something that I've noticed personally. As far as feel on the bike, um, it's definitely, I would say it's my third favorite brace. Um, the pod and the Mobius have a little bit better feel. You can definitely feel the hinge area. There's kind of, as I was saying, there's kind of a pressure point there. This brace is also kind of bulky, despite its pretty small form factor. It's actually a pretty bulky brace. When you go to put your pants over it, it's very noticeable. And there's big gaps around your leg, kind of in this frame. And this might just be a sizing thing. So if your legs are shaped differently, this might not be an issue for you. But again, this is something that I've noticed. When it comes to protection, I think it has really good ligament protection. It's very rigid. It's got adjustable lockouts here that I think you adjust with a tool. The motion is really fluid. It's probably one of the nicer hinges. I think it's nicer than Pod and Mobius. It's probably on par with the Donjoy. Yeah, it's very rigid brace, great ligament protection. Impact protection, I think, is the weak spot for this specific brace. So you can, when your knee is straight, it's fine. There's really good protection of the kneecap. There's a lot of padding on the inside, but you see this little protector at the bottom. This is very, very flimsy. So this is not going to stop. If you fall down, you hit a rock, this is not going to do anything. There's a tiny bit of padding here, but it's mostly just for comfort. It's probably 1/8 of an inch. Try and get a good shot of it here. There's probably 1/8 of an inch padding here. It's very, very flimsy. And when your knee bends, especially, so when you fall down, it's going to be kind of like this. There's a huge exposed area underneath this kneecap. And because of this pad, the protector actually stays on your kneecap and exposes the top of your tibia and actually the bottom of your knee joint right here. So if you fall down on some rocks, it's really gonna hurt. You can actually see in this shot really well, there's pretty much no protection there, which is not great. So I think in my opinion, that's the biggest weak spot of this brace, is the impact protection. It does not provide full coverage, from your boot going up to your knee. So here you can see how far this brace sits away from my leg. You can actually see the open air here, so you can see that this is what actually makes it kind of bulky. That it's not the frame itself is not very slim around your leg, but it is a very comfortable brace. The motion is absolutely fluid. It is pretty close to the Donjoy, if not more comfortable than the Donjoy. So on the bike, you can really see the exposed areas of protection. There's a huge exposed area here above the protector, and then between the boot and your kneecap, there's a big exposed area. So to summarize, I think this is a brace that it would be fantastic for somebody that's looking for something that offers the highest level of mobility, but doesn't want to go to a custom brace. It's incredibly comfortable. It provides better mobility than the two other off-the-shelf braces. It's really lightweight. You barely notice that it's there. But I don't think it's good for somebody that's looking for a high level of impact protection, simply because there's just not enough coverage there. So if you're doing the kind of riding that involves a lot of falling down onto your legs or hitting things with your legs, this is not a brace that I would personally recommend. Alright, so moving on to the Pod K8 brace. So this is a brace that I've personally used for a couple of years now, so I have a lot of experience with it. and I actually really like it. So the design is very similar to the CTI actually, but I think they improved in a number of areas. But overall, the hinge is almost, or the frame is almost identical. The hinges work differently. They have this human motion little ligament thing, but they're really smooth. They have two collars, top and bottom. So the frame itself is carbon fiber. You can kind of see it here. But these hinges, or these collars are plastic, so they have a little bit of flex to them. So they're actually really good at conforming to the top and the bottom of your leg. The straps are pretty good. They're pretty wide, and they have this big padding around a good chunk of them. So it's really easy to get this brace on, get it tight, and then get it to fit you very well. The inside of it is very well padded. This brace is very comfortable, and it fits very, very well. So out of the 4 braces here, this is the slimmest and the lightest by a significant margin. So it's really apparent when you go to put your pants over this brace that it is slimmer than all the other braces. Once you have it on and you're riding with it, you really don't notice it at all. So this one, more than any other brace, disappears on your body completely. It doesn't really snag on pants or anything either. And as far as the actual feel on the bike, this brace feels very, very good. There's no pressure points. I've never gotten off the bike even after an all-day ride and felt like there was any place where this was rubbing or putting pressure on my leg that was uncomfortable. So it's really comfortable. You can grip the bike with your leg really well. The only negative I would say about the fit and the feel of this brace is it does slide down more than the other braces if you don't tighten it really like all the way. So if it's even a little bit loose, it will slide down. It doesn't grip your leg quite as well as the other 3 braces. So as far as sizing goes, this is the same design as the pod, so you have to size by your knee joint. And it's I actually went through a couple different sizes with this one because you really need to make sure you measure your knee joint, otherwise it's uncomfortable. Pod makes a different size frame for every size, so if you get a frame that is even a little bit too small, it will really bother your leg. So I really encourage you to pay attention to the sizing guide for this brace. So as far as mobility, it's very good. It's not as good as the CTI or the Donjoy, but it's very fluid. I think it's a little bit better mobility and range of motion than the Mobius, in my opinion. All right, so protection. I think this offers really good ligament protection. When you put it on, you can immediately feel that your knee is kind of locked out from being able to hyperextend. The frame is very stiff, so it's not going to go side to side at all. I think ligament protection is top notch, absolutely on par with any of the other braces. I think probably almost as good as the Donjoy, and definitely as good as the CTI. But where this brace I think is better than the CTI, and really actually very good, is the impact protection. So the impact protector here it's pretty good. It's nothing special as far as the protector itself, but the important part is that it's full coverage. So even when your knee is fully bent, you have complete coverage top to bottom. So from the bottom of the brace, hard plastic, all the way to the top, including your tibia, the bottom of your joint, your kneecap, everything. I've taken plenty of falls onto my knees with this brace, and I've never had even as much as a bruise. So really good impact protection. As far as durability and quality, I think the quality of this brace is top notch. The frame is beautiful. All the components are really, really premium materials. It just feels like a premium piece. As far as durability, I've actually, about a year in, I've had some of this padding come apart. The backing of it comes off, and then it just is not attached anymore. So I think just from all the sweat and vibration, it just came loose. But I will give Pod a lot of credit. They've honored the warranty, and they've overnighted me a completely new set of pads for 2 braces, even though I actually only have 1. And they've actually also included 2 knee brace sleeves as well, which was, you know, $60 I think is what those typically run. So the support from Pod as a company, it was really, really good. I would definitely trust them to stand behind their product. So I was very impressed with that. So, and aside from the padding coming apart, this brace has been very, very durable. I probably have about 200 hours on it, and I've really had no issues. So I think overall, this is a Goldilocks brace. So I think this is a perfect brace for all around dirt biking, just because it provides a lot of mobility, good ligament protection, good impact protection. It's just good all around. It's maybe not the best at any one thing, but when you put this on, you can hop on a bike and go do whatever. So I think this is a perfect all around knee brace for dirt biking. So unlike with the CTI, you can actually see that the frame is very, very close to my legs. So it's a much, much slimmer brace overall. It's very comfortable, very good mobility. Full protection, top to bottom, all the way down from the boot, all the way up the entire leg. So onto the Mobius. So this brace is very different from the other braces that we've seen so far. The main difference is the overall design. So they don't use a traditional frame like all the other ones. This frame is actually also the body. They kind of do it in a clever way. You can, so the whole thing is glass-filled nylon, aka plastic, and it's soft in some spots and rigid in others. And you can actually see where these reinforcement ridges are. It almost kind of looks like your traditional CTI type frame. So what they did is just made this entire brace one unit, which allows them to keep the weight down, and strategically made it thicker in certain spots to kind of mimic the frame, but it's all one unit. And it actually works really, really well. And this is where we'll kind of get into the fit portion of it, because the top and the bottom are flexible because they're not reinforced, so that it allows it to conform to your leg really well. And the other aspect of it is this part actually is flexible in and out, so that allows it to grip your knee joint really well without putting a ton of pressure on it like a stiff carbon fiber frame would. So that makes it both tight as far as being able to protect you, and at the same time very comfortable, which I think is a pretty genius idea. The other aspect that makes it actually fit really well and be a very comfortable brace that stands out from all the other ones is the fact that the straps are really thick or really wide, and there's a lot of padding on the inside of the brace. So you can really, really cinch it down, and then you have this ligament support thing with a BOA system that allows you to really, really cinch this brace down. And it's still comfortable, but it also is very, very tight on your leg, which is critical for providing protection. So because the knee joint here is flexible, the sizing is actually based on your thigh size. And the reason for this is mostly, so the frames are the same across different sizes. What actually varies is the thickness of the padding. And the size of this ligament support. So you need to be able to tighten it all the way. And this is where you can see this kind of makes a circle. So you essentially measure the circumference here. And that's how you determine the sizing for this brace. And it works pretty well. So I advise you to follow the size guide. As far as feel, this brace is pretty bulky. You can see that it's bulky, but it actually feels really nice on the bike. The overall feel of this brace I would describe as you feel like your leg is in a blanket. It feels way more protective and supportive than the other braces. It really just wraps your entire leg. It's a very comfortable feeling, so to speak. And despite being bulky, I think this brace, in my opinion, actually has the best bike feel. And the reason for that is that it's actually very slim hinge-wise. So it's very slick and slim right here, so you really feel a very constant pressure against your leg, against the bike. And it's a really nice feeling brace on the bike as well. And mobility is pretty good. It's because of its bulk, it feels like you're a little bit more constricted, but the hinge is smooth. There's no issues with mobility there. So when it comes to protection, I think the ligament protection of this brace is as good as any of the other off-the-shelf braces, in my opinion. It's rigid everywhere it needs to be. It won't let your knee hyperextend or go side to side. But I feel like where this brace really excels and almost has no competition as far as other knee braces are concerned is impact protection. So you have complete plastic coverage top to bottom with some really thick padding. And the coverage is also most importantly there when you bend your leg. So at full range of motion, your knee is covered by hard plastic and padding. Now you can see when I fully bend it, there is a little bit of a gap that opens up here. But really, it's, first of all, because your knee doesn't sit directly against this portion, there's no contact with the ground here. If you fall down on some rocks, you're still protected. And I think the other important aspect of the impact protection is that because this protector is built into the frame, when you hit the ground or you hit a tree or you hit a rock or something, the whole frame actually takes the load. So it's not just the protector then hitting your kneecap or your tibia or your shin or something like that. It distributes the load across the entire brace, which makes it much less likely that you're going to get some sort of knee injury or bruise or something like that. So as far as quality, this is a very high quality piece. Everything on it feels premium. It's plastic, it's not carbon fiber, so you don't get that, but everything on it feels very nice. Everything is stitched together as far as the straps go. The straps are really high quality, all the plastics are high quality. I can't comment on durability because I haven't really used this brace a ton yet, so we'll see how that goes. But I will say that Mobius has updated a number of things over the years where there were durability concerns. So I think that is a very promising thing to see from a company. When they see a problem, they go and fix it. So I'll look forward to really putting this brace through its paces and see how it holds up. So I think overall, this is the best brace for hitting things with your legs. Whether you're riding some really, really gnarly rocky terrain where you're falling down a lot, or you're riding tight woods where you're just hitting trees and saplings with your legs, I think for riding where you have a lot of impacts, this is absolutely without doubt the best brace you can get, while still providing a really good amount of actual knee ligament protection as well. Where I think it is less good is obviously if you ride a lot in really hot weather and you need a high degree of mobility. This is definitely the bulkiest brace out of the 4 that I have here, and it's going to absolutely be the hottest. Now that we've looked in a bit more detail at the 4 braces that I've been comparing myself, based on my experience and just having them in front of me, you can kind of see that none of these braces are bad. If we look at the table, you can see that there's certain areas where one brace is really good while it's sacrificing something else. And based on that, that's kind of how you have to make this decision. You have to make a decision based on what's really important to you, what kind of riding that you're planning on doing, what kind of crashing that you're planning on doing. And that's essentially what I've done here. So these are the 2 braces that I will be using personally based on the kind of riding I do, which is a lot more off-road, technical, where there is a lot of crashing at pretty low speeds. But a lot of falling down onto rocks and roots and hitting trees and so on. So, I will be using the Mobius kind of as my primary brace just because it provides such a high level of impact protection. And then when it's hot and I want something a little bit lighter weight, I will be using the pod because it still provides really good impact protection and it's much lighter and much more breathable. And both of these braces still I feel like provide great protection to the actual ligaments, and they're really nice in general. All of these braces are really nice in general. It's just a matter of prioritizing what is important to you. All right, guys, congratulations on making it all the way through this long video. Hopefully you got some good information out of it. If you have any questions about any of these braces, please feel free to leave a comment. If you'd like me to do a more detailed review on any of them, please also leave a comment. I'd love to share my experience on any of this stuff, especially if it's helpful to others in order to let you make a better informed decision. Thank you for watching, and happy riding.